wenn man hier vorne sitzt, sieht man gar nicht, dass noch so viele hier sind.
Well, when you sit in the first row, we can't see just how many people are still here.
Ein Kompliment.
Wow, compliments to all of you,
Nicht nur allen Teilnehmern, sondern
not just
auch Ihnen im
to all
Publikum,
the
dass
participants, but also to the audience,
mit uns hier diesen
that you have spent the whole day with
eine
us.
lange Zeit intensiv und ich habe
It was an intense day, and
alle
my
ständig
feeling is
dabei gewesen. Vielen,
that
vielen
you
Dank
stayed
dafür.
with us
Sie haben
all the
Glück
way
gehabt,
through. So thank you. It's fortunate that our
Biermann-Ausstellung
curatorium met yesterday. The Biermann
vorbereitet. Das war
exhibition
heute Morgen.
opened
Jetzt kommt also nicht nochmal
shortly.
eine halbe Stunde.
I only
Trotzdem
prepared one
möchte ich
presentation, which was my introduction I gave this morning, so I'm not going to speak for too long. I first of all want to thank all the speakers, all the moderators.
Danken, auch denen, die das uns
I also want to thank Christiane and Nicolas Weikart for enabling this symposium to take place. I'd like to thank Ms. Jakubik and Ms. Behren, thanks to the translators, thanks to the technicians, and in particular Dr. Thurn, who did a lot of preparatory work and supported us a great deal.
Zwei Dinge sagen.
There's two things I also want to say.
Das eine ist mehr so ein bisschen zum Kontext.
One is really on the context,
Sich vielleicht
because you might wonder,
Kontext wird das hier machen.
what's the context for hosting this symposium? It's the fifth
in dieser Reihe
symposium in our series Historical Judgment. We started with a topic
unmittelbar damit verbunden ist, nämlich
that was
über die
closely linked to this.
Sammlung,
We
was
looked at an object in our collection
haben wollte,
which the Republic of Namibia wanted to be returned. We had a public debate on this in exactly the same setting, and we wondered, well, what do we do with this object? So we didn't just ask our legal experts to write a note on how to deal with the request from Namibia. No, we had a public debate with representatives from Namibia and Portugal.
gehandelt. Wir haben nämlich
And we did come to a solution. The cross
also
of
insofern
the subject of that symposium was returned to Namibia. So it was always about something specific. It was always about important topic, and the topic of colonialism
zweiten Symposium, wo es die Geschichte
was touched indirectly in our second symposium, which was about the history of the documenta. That then became very political through the 15th documenta that followed. During the COVID pandemic, we had a symposium
der wurde einmal hier vermisst.
on Marx and Wagner.
Also der war nicht sozusagen aus systematischen Gründen.
Marx, of course, wasn't ignored today for
auch darüber was machen können. Und das letzte
general reasons, we just didn't have time. And the fourth symposium was a precursor to an exhibition, just like the Documenta Symposium. The fourth
Fragen
symposium looked at questions
ausstellt im Zusammenhang
connected to exhibiting violence. It was linked to a new initiative of the Federal Parliament,
der Einrichtung eines Zentrums, was sich mit
which is the establishment of a center
30 bis 45 in ganz Europa beschäftigen soll.
engaging with NS crimes
Jetzt haben wir gestern auch
in Europe.
beschlossen,
So yesterday we agreed that
Ausstellung
a first exhibition is going to be shown in 2025.
ersten Bildern
We'll show first images of
in Ausstellungen, die unmittelbar
crimes that took place in the period 1939 and 1945 in Prague, in Warsaw, in Paris, also in Belgium.
jetzt also diese
So
was
now,
daraus wird, was darauf hängen bleibt. Ich muss sagen, ich bin
this
zu müde,
symposium,
zu erschöpft, da
to be honest, right now I am too
eine konzise Antwort zu finden.
exhausted to find a concise answer to the question what remains, what stays with me.
Also
But
auch empirisch sehr viel gelernt.
I think we all learned a lot empirically, because no one, no single person has a complete overview of the
Darum haben wir mit ihm
topic.
ja auch angefangen.
The only person who might have that is Benedikt Stuchtey,
Der Kolonialismus.
and that's why we started with him, who has done systematic work on this notion of
Vielleicht glaube ich
a
auch
critique of colonialism. So I think his presentation was super helpful as an introduction. But when you then go into the various branches, we see just how big this field of inquiry is. And in terms of terminology alone, when we talk about critique of colonialism, this is not exactly the same as anti-colonialism. And we also saw that the term of colonialism, of imperialism, all these terms, when we put them side by side and start a debate, it isn't yet entirely clear. I mean, my feeling still was that we need to sharpen definitions, perhaps. I mean, colonies, a colony, that is a political term, but the term of race, for example, is not quite the same political notion. We also heard that in the German semantic context, this was a term stemming from anthropology. So I think there's more work to be done on this. It's not quite satisfying. I thought what was important is the emotionality that goes with that term, and that, I think, is because the term of race is one that devalues something. It isn't about race cannot be invoked without destroying the dignity of someone else, and therefore David Simo's presentation was really important with the crass examples of devaluing women. It's not nice, of course, to listen to these scenes, but it's important because only then do you understand that this term is not in the same category as nation, empire, or colony. Something else is inherent in that term. It's not a political notion alone. So I think we need to think more about the emotionality that goes with certain terms. A colony without racism is hard to imagine, for example. The two seem to go together. At the same time, we saw that when we talked about China, all of a sudden, it was no longer quite so clear to what degree the anti-colonialists but also very colonial in terms of their gestures. So you really have to look very closely into the different forms of branches of colonialism. I think that it became very clear that we're dealing with rather different phenomena. So different discussions that need to be considered. Transculturalism is also a term that we perhaps need to consider, or anti-Semitism. There's also the Christian legacy that we need to deal with, which then becomes secularized and enters scientific debates or pseudo-scientific debates. For example, when it comes to marriage, it's interesting to see how those notions were applied. But of course, that's not the same as talking about racism. You see right away that they are two different phenomena. But when we specifically look at German history and the history of anti-colonialism in Germany, and we tried to start with a period in time before German colonies existed. We then looked at the Weimar period, the Nazi period, and our contemporary history. We see that there's a need in our culture of remembrance. We need to think about how do the different debates overlap? To what degree are debates interconnected? And again, I think we haven't come very far in that respect. But of course, it's hugely interesting. And of course, it's a good thing to end a symposium by noting that not everything has been conclusively debated. So I'd like to thank you all for attending. I hope that we'll continue the series. I hope you'll return. And once more, thank you to all the speakers and the organizers. Have a very good evening.